Good afternoon, everyone. As House Speaker, it is an honor to join my colleagues and friends on this historic day, a historic day for the Congress and for our country. Today, more than 150 years after he was first elected to the House of Representatives, we pay tribute to the legacy of Congressman Joseph Rainey of South Carolina. In affixing his name to room H-150, both in commemoration of this milestone and to mark where he served as a member of the Committee on the Indian Affairs, we help share Joseph Rainey's extraordinary story. It's fitting we do so during Black History Month, when we celebrate many giants of American history, including many unsung heroes. Let us salute with Jim Clyburn, a proud son of South Carolina, and a former history teacher who's teaching us every day. It says former history teacher, but he every day teaches us history in the Congress. A former history teacher has worked for years to share the legacy of his hero, including by unveiling a portrait of Joseph Rainey in the Capitol in 2005. Thank you, Chair Joyce Beatty of the Congressional Black Caucus, a force to ensure that many contributions of American black lawmakers and others are known and appreciated. Thank you to Congressman Tom Rice, lead sponsor of the bill, to rename H-150 for Joseph Rainey, which passed unanimously. Thank you. And it is a blessing to be here on this momentous occasion with Lorna Rainey, the great-granddaughter of Joseph Rainey, as well as your children and nieces and grandnieces, I guess, as well as, and of whom the Congressman would be very, very proud. Joseph Rainey was a brilliant orator, tireless legislator, and patriotic leader. Born enslaved, Congressman Rainey forever changed our nation when he became our nation's first black congressman. But his trailblazing leadership in the House altered the course of our history. He helped rebuild our nation in the wake of the Civil War, fighting for formerly enslaved Americans with major civil rights bills. He fought against racial violence with the Ku Klux Klan Act, a law empowering the federal government to protect families in the South from terrorist violence. And he was a fearless advocate for human rights, from the poorest workers to immigrants to Native Americans and more. Perhaps Congressman Rainey's most inspiring legacy is an unyielding and patriotic belief in the power of our Constitution and our work for the people. In his first major floor speech, Rainey said, "The Constitution was the bulwark of freedom, protecting the humblest citizen without regard to rank, creed, or color. Tell me nothing," he said in 1871, "of a Constitution which fails to shelter beneath its rightful power the people of the country." More than a century and a half later, in this spirit, Congress is carrying on his work to form a more perfect union, including by fighting to protect voting rights. It is, as Speaker, it's been my priority to ensure that the Capitol tells the full story of America. Today, this building is home to statues of civil rights icons Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, and Frederick Douglass, brave suffragists Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony. They were there before I became Speaker. Indigenous leaders, King Kamehameha the First, Prope, Sarah Winnemucca, and more. And here in the halls of columns, many members will see the Rainey Room every day, a proper symbol. Now, this would not have happened without the cooperation of the Republican leader of the House. Thank you so much. The Republican, and he has been very, it's your office, it's your room, right? So thank you so much for your leadership in so many ways, for your appreciation of the leadership and the historic importance of Congressman Rainey, and for your generosity of spirit, your hospitality to enable this plaque to be in front. Now, when we go there and you see this plaque in front of it, and you see the painting of Joseph Rainey, also there, right along that hallway, is a picture of Shirley Chisholm. And when you look at the picture, remember this, she will follow you. She'll follow you right over to Joseph Rainey. Indeed, all who walk through these hallowed halls will know their stories are part of the American story, a lesson needed now as much as ever before. And with that, it's a privilege to yield to this relentless champion of Joseph Rainey's life and leadership. Relentless, persistent, proud, successful in achieving his goal, the Democratic Whip of the House, Mr. Clyburn.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me begin by thanking the Republican Whip for his cooperation getting all this done. And my real colleague, my homeboy, Tom Rice, who represents Georgetown these days here in the Congress. Madam Speaker, you have been so prescient with so many things. I first approached the Speaker about naming a room here in this building for Joseph Rainey, and she was very receptive to doing so, but a bit hesitant in telling me where the room would be and when. Well, we all knew that December 12th was the 150th anniversary of his having been sworn in, but she had something else in mind, and she came up with the room 150. It's so appropriate for that to be, and there right at where all of the sort of mementos that have been established by the clerk. Thank you so much for that. And then we started doing a little research. Maybe she had done it before. It would not surprise me if she had. And found out that room 150 was a room that Rainey met in often as a member of the Indian Affairs Committee. And it was so appropriate. Now, what I did not know until we started walking through was it's now occupied by the Republican Whip. But he is pleased to move over. But you know, that too was historic. Joseph S. Rainey was a Republican. Yeah. And so you ought not feel too anxious about that. He's right there. But I want to thank all of them for doing this. As many of you know, I'm a stickler for getting the history right, really getting it right, and paying honor where it should be paid. And so I'm going to reiterate that Joseph H. Rainey was the first African-American elected to the United States Congress. There were a couple of senators who were appointed to the United States Congress, but he was the first elected one. And I think the little county of Georgetown, I know they're very proud of Rainey. They've named a park years ago. I was pleased to be a part of that in his honor. And I think it's important for many, many reasons. It's important because we are at a point in the country where people are mislabeling what this is all about. We're here because of an historic fact, not a theory, a fact. And we're here to honor an historic figure, not a theory, but a person. And I think it's important for us to recognize that and not let these historic facts and figures get muddled with foolishness. I think that's very important. I have children. I have grandchildren. I want them to feel as proud of this country as I am. But I always say to people, just remember, anything that's happened before can happen again. And when I go around my lovely state, people often refer to me as the first African-American to serve in the United States Congress. I'm the 9th from South Carolina. The problem is there are 95 years between number 8 and number 9. 95 years. Anything that's happened before can happen again. That's why it's so critical for us to keep things in the proper perspective and remember history should be learned from and therefore honored. That's why we're here today. And I want to thank this family for coming here and being a part of this. You'll make me real proud of my lovely state. And with that, I'm pleased to yield to the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, though she hails from Ohio. Is okay. It was one of the places on the Underground Railroad, and I was pleased to be a part of establishing the Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati, Ohio, with Lou Stokes and Bob Portman, the Republican senator from Ohio. So we have always been bipartisan with this historic stuff. And I thank these two members for being in here, but keep it that way. Joyce Beatty.
Thank you. Today we're gathered to commemorate the legacy of Congressman Joseph H. Rainey. Madam Speaker, Majority Whip, and colleagues, thank you for being here, for sponsoring the legislation, having us in your room. Earlier, I had the opportunity to meet the family, and then with his great-granddaughter, as we stood next to that photo of your great-grandfather and took that picture, I will cherish it forever. Historic does not seem like an adequate enough word to describe the life of Congressman Joseph H. Rainey. Through tenacious trials and tribulations, he became, as you have heard, the first elected black member of Congress and the longest-serving black lawmaker during Reconstruction. He worked to pass comprehensive civil rights legislation and advance the rights of Americans regardless of rank, creed, or color. He oversaw legislation to prosecute Klansmen, defended voting rights, and ensured equitable access to financial services. And isn't it ironic that old battles have again become new? As we continue our fight to defend our rights to vote and our democracy against those who would erase the progress we have made, we say thank you, Congressman Rainey. Progress such as a moment in history, Mr. Clyburn. 101 years after Congressman Rainey was sworn in, when 13 black members of the Congressional Black Caucus came together to form the Congressional Black Caucus. And here I stand as the 27th chair, the 9th female, with my colleagues who are here today. We say thank you to the family for giving us him during our 50th anniversary last year, and we continue to embody the legacy of Congressman Rainey. Congressman Rainey's story shows that although oppression can hinder progress, it cannot stop it. His historic legacy opened the door for young black women and men to pursue elected office, and for that we are grateful. His legacy lives on through you. Cherish that. It lives on through you and through everyone here today and in this room, which we will forever commemorate his life and his contributions to the United States. And from the CBC, that's our power, that's our message as the conscience of the Congress. Thank you. And it gives me great pleasure to yield to Whip Scalise. Oh, I'm sorry. I like this even better. I like this a lot. It gives me great honor and pleasure to yield to Lorna Rainey, the great-granddaughter of Joseph H. Rainey. The floor is yours, and yes, you may applaud.
Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, members of the press and our esteemed public servants, especially Madam Speaker, Congressman Clyburn, Minority Whip Scalise, my friend Tom Rice, and on behalf of the Rainey family, I want to extend our sincere gratitude for and to everyone who worked tirelessly to make this tribute a reality. Being here in this building, one cannot help but feel the history of our great nation enveloping us. This is the very seat of democracy, the place where our duly elected public officials come to do the people's work. And it is here that Joseph Rainey came, determined to be a part of the change which was sorely needed. He knew that the people could not speak for themselves, nor change the things which impacted their lives. And he'd come to the conclusion that being inside the process was the only way to improve their circumstance. Many times, I've imagined what it must have felt like for him on that first day when he walked into the chamber and looked around, knowing that he was the only person of color to be in such a prestigious and unprecedented position. But he was undaunted. I'm sure he thought of all the people who were relying on him, and he pressed on. A mere 4 months after he was seated, Congressman Rainey, along with Senator Charles Sumner, introduced the KKK Act of 1871, which was finally signed into law in 1875. That alone tells you what type of public servant he endeavored to be. Currently, there's so much about him which you can learn from books and the internet. When I was a little girl, there was literally nothing about him to be found anywhere. But because of my great aunt, the congressman's daughter, I also learned about Joseph, the man, the dedicated father and husband, as well as the man who'd broken barriers and made history. Me knowing about him through her gave me a sense of confidence and self-worth that has served me well all these years. On many occasions when I didn't know if or how I could reach my goals, I thought of him and said, if great-grandfather could achieve so much in his time, with so much against him, and not even the protection of the law could be assumed, then surely I cannot let anyone deter me. It is this type of courage which inspires us all these years later. And I feel that way today about each and every one of our public servants. If Joseph Rainey could accomplish so much during his time, then certainly you can be the ones to get the people's work done. We're all relying on you. The richness of our country is her people, of all ethnicities and social standings. And there are countless other Joseph Raineys out there right now, looking for their opportunities to contribute to our nation's future. Without passage of voting rights, there would have been no first black congressman to honor today. As we honor this man, please let us remember what he stood for, what he put his life in danger for, and why his legacy endures today. Perhaps in times of confusion, chaos, or crisis, you could ask yourself, what would Joseph Rainey do? Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you for this history-making honor and all the events you shared with us as descendants today. We're overwhelmed by this room dedication. I'm barely holding it together. Please join me in honoring him with the continuance of the ideals he worked for and believed in. The mission continues, and I want to thank my Rainey Republicans in the room. That's all for me. Thank you.
Well, such wonderful words. It's truly an honor to be a part of this dedication, especially to be in the presence of Joseph Rainey's family. to be descendants of somebody that we've honored many times. We've walked past portraits of Joseph Rainey. Jim Clyburn has always had this portrait, not this exact one, a replica of this portrait in his office. Jim Clyburn and I, as the Republican and Democrat whip, actually have, every now and then we might spar, but we actually have a lot of things in common too. He's a history teacher. As a student of history, we've both looked at and appreciated some of the same history of this country, and especially as it's depicted in this Capitol. I used to go to work every day in a room that is now called the Lincoln Room. It's a room that Abraham Lincoln used to spend time in. Jim is now the person who has the Lincoln Room. He pays tribute to Abraham Lincoln. And when you think about Joseph Rainey, and of course, Jim has always paid tribute to Joseph Rainey, and now I will get to walk into room 150 in my office every day through the door that is now emboldened and named after Joseph Rainey, and that'll be a great honor. Because if you think about the two of them, Abraham Lincoln fought slavery, ultimately led the fight to change the Constitution to end slavery, and then you think about Joseph Rainey, who was born into slavery, who ultimately became free, and then just a few years after the end of slavery, gets elected to be the first African-American member of Congress. Just a great story. But he didn't just come up here to hold a title. He came up here to make a difference, and make a difference he did. As Speaker Pelosi mentioned, led the fight to pass the Ku Klux Klan Act to allow the Justice Department to have more tools to go after the Klan. Led the fight on so many other issues dealing with equality, which was very elusive at that time, but it was his voice, along with others, that really helped break through. And, you know, there's a saying that we hear a lot. It says, only in America. You hear it applied to a lot of things. But when you think about that term, Joseph Rainey is really the embodiment of it, because only in America can someone who's born into slavery actually get elected to the United States House of Representatives, the greatest democracy in the history of the world. We've always been a country with flaws, but our founding fathers talked about making America a more perfect union, and Joseph Rainey, only in America, got to then, after being a slave, come up and do his part to help America become a more perfect union. It is a great tribute. Thank the Rainey family, Speaker Pelosi, everyone involved, and we will always have a constant tribute to Joseph Rainey and how he left such an important mark on our country, and will continue to inspire all of us to achieve even more. Another person who brought forward the legislation to bring us to this day to name this room after Joseph Rainey, from South Carolina, my colleague Tom Rice.
Well, thank y'all for being here. You come from great stock. Not good stock, great stock. Joseph Rainey was an American hero, but he also even more, I think, an inspiration. So many American heroes, what makes them inspirational is that they come from such humble beginnings, and they face incredible adversity and overcome it. And when I think about Joseph Rainey, I can't imagine anybody that would have overcome any more than what he did. Born into slavery, his father bought his family out of slavery with his earnings as a barber, and Joseph followed in his footsteps. The Civil War broke out. Joseph was conscripted into the Confederate Army, but he escaped to Bermuda, carried out his trade, and when the war was over, he came back to Georgetown, South Carolina, and he became the president of the County Republican Party. Wow. Can you imagine what pressure he faced? And then he became the first elected representative African American in the country. can you imagine the pressure that he faced and the obstacles that he had to overcome every day, every single day? And he came here and he made a difference. I have to tell you that my mother grew up in Georgetown. My grandparents lived in Georgetown. They lived about 3 or 4 blocks from Mr. Rainey's house. And Mr. Rainey's house is marked. It's a beautiful house. I mean, it's not a huge house, but it's a beautiful house. And it's marked by a historical marker. And the first time I ever heard of Joseph Rainey, I'm embarrassed to say, was when I came to Congress in 2013, and there was a portrait of him hanging in the hallway, in the stairwell on the, I guess, east side of the Capitol. And I read that plaque, and I said, first African-American congressman from South Carolina, from Georgetown, my district, where my mother grew up, and 40 miles from where I grew up. Never heard of him. So I did a little reading. About 5 years ago, I happened to be in Georgetown. Actually, I was in Georgetown for the eclipse about 4 or 5 years ago. And I parked my car, and there was a historical marker right there beside my car in the eclipse. Maybe God was leading me around. And that was Joseph Rainey's house. So I started thinking, if I don't know that much about Joseph Rainey, maybe we should do more to shine light on this. So we came back and put up a bill to name the post office in Georgetown after Joseph Rainey, a small token. And I will tell you that had Mr. Clyburn not helped me, that bill would probably never have seen the light of day.
That's correct.
But I got to also say this. My great-great-grandfather, James Henry Rice, he fought in the Civil War for the South. After the Civil War, he ran for the House of Representatives, or the State House Representatives, and won. Served one term, and then he became the Secretary of Education in South Carolina. And he opened the first free schools in the state. Now, he was a Democrat. Joseph Rainey was a Republican. Maybe I'm more politically aligned with Joseph Rainey, I don't know. But I'm proud of both of them. I'm proud that they're both South Carolinians. And you, across the hall, I said, you should come and see his house. And I will be happy to show it to you. I would be proud to show it to you. And I am proud of both of them. And this recognition is long, long overdue. And I'm proud for the little part that I played in it. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Clyburn, Mr. Scalise, and the whole Rainey family. Thank you.
Mr. Rice, thank you for sharing those personal aspects of not only Joseph Rainey's life, but your connection there. How beautiful. We have been joined by some of our colleagues. Thank you for coming. And Mr. Neguse, how are you? Any questions from our friends in the press? I have some. Do you think that all of this would have happened if Joseph Rainey were not from South Carolina? What do you think? What do you think?
It might have.
It might have. I have another question. How do you like the way he is dressed?
Yes.
Isn't he beautiful?
Yes.
I did read in one of the books about Lincoln that when members of the black community ever came to the Capitol, and of course this is after Lincoln, but came to the Capitol, they always came in their Sunday finest, where some white folks sometime were in foul weather gear and other things like that. But he certainly was a beautiful, 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 dignified member of Congress. And really to the family, thank you. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence here today. Your great, great, great uncle, grandfather, has brought us together, Democrats and Republicans. Thank you for that. Now, if there are no questions, we're going to go down the hall and we're going to participate in history. Let us thank Mr. Clyburn for making that possible.
Great job.
Oh, yeah, this was really neat.
This was amazing.
Oh, okay. Somebody got all this. I hope
Do you think
really
probably
good.
if you weren't from South Carolina?
Are you working for them?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
This is cool only.
Oh,
Yeah.
they just said I could cover a break.
Are you working for a news agency?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You're a freelancer, right? I mean, I don't know who you're working for, right?
Huh?
I mean, you're a freelancer, right?
Yes.
Yes, I don't know. I could have been working for them for all I know. Yeah, it is cool though.
This person is on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. I'm not making it up. Okay, you're so low though. Is there any way you can go up? I mean, you can't even see the flag.
One, two, three. All right. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's probably coming up on a picture.
Was this picture here?
That black thing down. That black
I'm good. You get in. All right, this is enough.
remember who I am.